My name is Taylor Sands, and I am a senior consumer engagement manager with MED-EL. I am excited to introduce you to two of my friends tonight and also their four-legged friends as we talk about safety first and how man's best friend ensures my safety. We have been invited by South Carolina Beginnings to talk tonight in this parent series and really getting the opportunity to highlight safety when it comes to hearing loss and also having the opportunity just to talk about advocacy and options available for you. So again, I'm Taylor Sands, and one of my main roles with MED-EL is getting to work very closely with our Hear Peer community. And our Hear Peer community is made up of recipients of cochlear implants, parents of children who have cochlear implants, and also their families. And it's through this group that I find so much inspiration and constantly am learning and being able to help and support more and more folks in the community with hearing loss. And that is how I had the opportunity to meet both Arielle and Krista through this Hear Peers community, as they are both MED-EL recipients. So when South Carolina Beginnings reached out to us to participate, I immediately reached out to these two friends because one thing I have in common with them is I also am a dog owner, but my dog does not take care of me in the same way as Taylor and Verona, who you'll meet about, because my dog is sleeping in the corner, so she's not much help tonight. So with that, I'm going to pass the baton and let you meet my friend Krista Rey.
Hi everyone, my name is Krista Rey and I am currently a teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing in Portland, Oregon. I grew up in Northern California and then I went to college in Portland. And then because I have a passion for deaf education, I actually went out to St. Louis, Missouri for graduate school and then started my career in Northern California. And I ended back up in Portland this summer after the pandemic because I wanted to be closer to family, and my family lives up here in this area. I currently wear a hearing aid on my left ear and a cochlear implant on my right ear. So being hard of hearing has definitely developed my passion for deaf education and giving back to that community. Can you go to the next slide? Can you go to the next slide? There we go. So I was born with a severe to profound hearing loss in both ears due to Mondini's malformation and something called enlarged vestibular aqueduct. It essentially means I have half of a cochlea and I have progressive hearing loss, which is something that'll come into play a little later. They think that my mom had a virus when she was pregnant with me, and we think something happened during that time to hinder the development of my ears. Unfortunately, when I was born in 1993, the newborn hearing screening wasn't around yet, so it went undiagnosed for the first 18 months of my life. I was diagnosed after my mom noticed I wasn't talking like other children my age. One day she came home from work and called my name, and I didn't even turn my head. So that was when she realized that something was going on. I was fit with hearing aids shortly after, and my parents chose for me to learn listening and spoken language. I attended an option school in Northern California to learn how to listen and talk for 2 years. And then I did so well that I was able to be mainstreamed into kindergarten in my neighborhood school, and I thrived with the appropriate supports. So the supports I used mainly growing up were an FM system, and then a note taker and closed captioning when I got a little older. And that's a cute little picture of me at 18 months right after I got my hearing aids. Next. So in May 2016, I experienced sudden hearing loss due to that enlarged vestibular aqueduct that I was born with. And the way that I describe it is that it's like someone flipped a light switch. So one day I could hear out of my right ear with the hearing aid, and then the next day I couldn't. So because of that, I became a cochlear implant candidate in my right ear. I was implanted in August 2016 and then activated in September 2016 with a Med-Al device. I mainly chose Med-Al just because of the reliability of the internal component. Now I wear the Sonnet 1 and the Rondo 2, although I primarily wear Sonnet 1 for my day-to-day living. The beginning was very challenging as I only heard beep for those first few months, but then slowly those beeps turned into like wind chimes. And then around the 3-month mark, I was able to get environmental sounds and simple speech sounds like so that M and S sound. And then as I learned to listen again through those auditory activities, the implant got better and better. Now I do really well with it, especially in the high frequencies and the environmental sounds. The low frequencies are still challenging, but I still continue to do those auditory activities to train my brain. With the hearing aid and the implant together, I do very well, and I hear almost perfectly. And then the auditory activity that I do pretty regularly is read books on tape. So I'll have the actual book and I'll read it as I'm listening to it with my implant only. And that's a picture of me on activation day. So right around the time that I had this sudden hearing loss in 2016, my mom mentioned to me that I should look into getting a hearing dog. I was in graduate school at the time and I was living with roommates, and a year later I would be graduated and living by myself. So not being able to hear at night poses a safety risk to me when I take my devices off, because when I take them off, I can't hear anything. So I applied to Duo Dogs, they're formerly support dogs, in St. Louis, Missouri in summer 2016, and I was approved and put on the wait list. The wait was about a year because I was matched in June 2017 with Taylor, and it was meant to be. She's such a little love bug, which is appropriate because she's a Valentine's Day baby. And it was like my birthday's in February, and then her litter was the country music singer's litter, and I love country music. So it just felt like all the pieces fit together and everything was perfect. So after I was matched with her, we went to a 2-week training, which was pretty intense. It was long days. And during that training, the trainer taught me everything I needed to know about service dog, grooming, training techniques. We worked a lot on those hearing skills during those 2 weeks and transferring that from the trainer to me, so Taylor would alert me when those things went off. We practiced a lot of training on like alerting to door knocks and alarm clocks and fire alarms and those kinds of things. Now I do annual recertifications every year with Duo, and I do it by video because I live far away. And then every 3 years, I travel to St. Louis and do the recertification in person. I was supposed to go this last summer, but because of the pandemic, that did not happen. So hopefully we'll go this year, maybe next year. And Duo's been great. I've run into a few training challenges as well, and they've been great, giving me advice and helping me fix little problems. So these are pictures during the 2-week training. The bottom picture is at the site, teaching her how to pick up a phone, and then we went to Target one day to practice public access. And then the picture closest to the words is our official portrait from the training. Next slide. So Taylor now mainly alerts me to the fire alarms, alarm clocks, and door knocks and timers in the home environment. And there was one day that I was cooking pizza pretty recently in the oven, and I went to set my timer, and then I'm the person that forgets about things. I'll go do something else. And then the timer went off and Taylor alerted me, and I was like, oh, Taylor, you saved the pizza from burning. So it's moments like that that I think like, oh, I'm so thankful I have you. I'm so thankful that you're helping me out. Another incident that happened was someone broke into my apartment at night when I didn't have my hearing aids on and my cochlear implant on. And so in that, you know, she was able to wake me up and I was able to call 911. And if I didn't have her, that would not have happened. So it's those safety things that she's really helped me out on. And I always say, I'm so thankful for you. I'm so thankful that I have you. When we're out in public together, she'll maybe perform what's called a blind retrieve. And so if I drop something and I don't hear her, she'll stop and pick it up for me. She does accompany me at work as a teacher and when I'm out doing errands. I'll occasionally leave her at home when I'm going to events that include fireworks just because that's really scary for her. When I fly, she travels on airplanes with me. She does great. And the one thing that's been really cool about this experience as a teacher is I've been able to educate others about service dogs and hearing dogs and proper etiquette with them. And that's the one thing I remember from the team training at Duo is that they told me that she's going to help you live an independent life, but it's also your job to educate the public about service dogs and hearing dogs and proper etiquette with them in stores. And I always say that Taylor's my second set of ears. We do really well with the devices. I do really well with devices, but I don't hear everything when I have them on. And then when I take my devices off at night or in the shower, she's that second set of ears for me. So these are some pictures. We went to a conference a couple years ago. So that's her just hanging out under the couch. And then the picture of the two of us on the other side was when we went to Arizona about a year ago. Okay, next slide. So I brought 2 videos of demonstrations. The first one on the other side is a demonstration of a timer in public. So you can play. So I didn't hear that, but that's okay. So you can see in the video, she heard the timer and she used her paw to kind of paw my leg to alert me that you're the timer. And then I said, where is it? And then she kind of looked at where and I walked, and then we walked over to where the phone was. And then the second video on this other side I'm going to show you is demonstrating the blind retrieve. So I purposely dropped something in this video and then she's going to pick it up. So yeah, so that's the blind retrieve. So those are just some of the things that she does for me. And then next slide. So yeah, that's just my story with Taylor. I'm like an open book, so if you have any questions, want to know more about dual dogs or anything about service dog, my email's on the screen there is kristaray11@gmail.com. So I'm going to hand things over to Arielle now and let her share her story a little bit.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Arielle Abrams. I am, as Taylor mentioned, I am currently living and working in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm from Columbia, Maryland. I went to undergrad at the University of Maryland, and I moved south to North Carolina to attend graduate school, and now I'm in South Carolina. I'm a somewhat recent bilateral cochlear implant recipient, as well as a somewhat recent recipient of a hearing dog. So a little bit about my hearing loss. I was born in 1994, right on the cusp of universal newborn hearing screenings. I was not screened as a baby, and my mom says that I made a lot of noise, as well as responded when my name was called as a baby. At one of my regular checkups with the pediatrician, the nurse noticed that I was not making the types of consonant sounds that I should have been making by that time. So they contacted Child Find, and I was referred for an auditory brainstem response hearing test. I was diagnosed with moderately severe to severe hearing loss in both ears, and I was fit with hearing aids shortly after and enrolled in early intervention services. So I attended Maryland School for the Deaf, as well as the Early Childhood Center with the local school system. I did a few days a week at each. And my mom said that American Sign Language was really critical for me then. It took my brain a little while to figure out what to do with all the new sounds, but I was able to pick up the signs much faster. And then after my ASL really took off, my spoken language kind of came with that because I was able to pair kind of the words with the signs. Eventually, I had to pick between the two, and I chose to attend hearing school. My parents left that choice up to me. And with no one else in my family having hearing loss, I think that decision was probably kind of clear to me. So this picture on the right is me wearing my FM system along with my hearing aids. So it was on a little harness back then. So I wanted to touch a little bit on the different accommodations that I had throughout the school years. I used an FM system from preschool all the way through graduate school, and I still use it now in the form of a Roger Pen or a Roger Select. My parents really advocated and fought for me to have all the access that I needed. So I received speech therapy through 8th grade. In kindergarten through 1st grade, I used an ASL interpreter, but by this time I wasn't really signing quite as much, and I ultimately preferred to kind of rely on the microphone. Somewhere in my teenage years, my hearing loss declined over time to severe to profound. And in high school and college, I used a captioning system similar to Krista's. Looking back after my cochlear implant surgeries, I kind of realized how hard I was working all of those years. So a little bit about my cochlear implant journey. When I was in my undergrad program, I started to learn a little bit about cochlear implants. And I should mention that growing up, my parents and I did not really learn about CIs because at the time I wouldn't have really been a candidate. So in college, I still thought, I'm not really a candidate for that. But then in grad school, I had a course on cochlear implants, and I started to work with pediatric and adult cochlear implant recipients when I rotated through the clinics. So I realized I should at least get evaluated and learn more about my options. And I ended up getting implanted with my first side in December of 2017, and I was activated in January of 2018, just a few days before the start of spring semester. I chose Med-El, similarly to Krista, because of the internal device, but also because the United States headquarters of Med-El is in Durham, North Carolina, which was just a few miles from where I was living. And so this kind of provided an added comfort for me when I was taking this big step. I thought I was going to be bimodal for a long time, but my implanted ear took off and it was just totally different, all the sounds I was hearing. And so my second side was actually done in March of 2020. So it's been almost a year. So the biggest changes that I notice are the amount of effort that I put into listening is exponentially less. My listening fatigue has completely decreased, and I can hear high frequency sounds now. So things like birds and crickets, and then things like squeaky shoes that I never realized how loud these sounds were. So for both ears, it was a learning curve and in a different way for each, but the change has been positive overall. So why a hearing dog? All my life, I lived with either family or friends, and I could rely on them for these environmental sounds. So if a fire alarm went off, this actually happened in college, the alarm went off when I was in the shower, didn't hear it, came out of the shower, everyone had evacuated. So I knew that if I wanted to live alone at some point, I would need to be able to be safe. And I also wanted to not have to rely on always living with someone else for my own safety. So without my hearing aids, I could hear some of these loud sounds, but without my cochlear implants, I'm now profound when I take them off. So there are a ton of organizations out there. I spent a lot of time researching all these different organizations. They have different training programs. They might use different types of dogs, different minimum age requirements. But my mom actually knew someone with the Canine Companions dog, and there were things about their program that I liked. So I ended up applying right around the time that I scheduled my first surgery. So I want to touch a little bit on Canine Companions for Independence and just talk about their program for a minute. They are a national organization with chapters all around the country. They do different types of dogs. So they do service dogs for people with physical disabilities. Facility dogs are those you might see in a healthcare, a visitation, or an education setting, and they're paired with a facilitator. So for example, a dog who works in a hospital in a physical therapy department. They do veteran dogs for veterans with PTSD, and they do skilled companion dogs who are trained to work with an adult or a child with a disability under the guidance of also a facilitator. So this will be a parent, a spouse, or a caregiver. And this third-party person is actually responsible for caring for the dog. Canine Companions has their own breeding programs. So all the dogs are some variation of lab and golden retriever, and they are raised by volunteer puppy raisers. And then they head back to the campus for college, essentially. The dogs are placed free of charge, and then you have ongoing support for the lifetime of the partnership. For the hearing dogs specifically, the trainings are done in Florida and California, and you have to be 18 years old to apply for a hearing dog. So meeting Verona. After I applied, I had 1 or 2 interviews, and then I was placed on a wait list. So in the spring of 2019, about a year and a half after I had applied, I was invited to the May 2019 training. So you go for 2 weeks. There were 6 of us there. We each worked with a few different dogs, and then on the 3rd or 4th day, you're kind of matched with who they think is going to be your dog that you'll go home with. In my class, we were all receiving hearing dogs, and there was a mix of cochlear implant and hearing aid users. So this was a really cool experience to, be in this class with other people with hearing loss. We were sharing our stories, our experiences, and, kind of things we had gone through in life. And we had a lot of similar stories to share. And we each left with a new partnership and a new dog. So in the year and a half that I have been paired with Verona, she's made a huge change. She wakes me up every morning to my alarm. I don't have to use a vibrating mattress anymore. She alerts me to different sounds in my environment, like the kitchen timer, the door knocking, the doorbell, and the fire alarm. And she even alerts me if I drop something when we're walking. So specifically my keys is what I've trained her on. I don't bring her to work with me right now, but she does come everywhere else with me, and we travel together. So out in public, I realized a car is coming, or maybe someone is coming up behind me, either running or on a bike, because I'm kind of watching to see her reaction to different sounds around us. And she's completely increased my confidence because of that. So in this picture on the left, she is sitting on an airplane where my carry-on would normally go. And then in the picture on the right, she is Verona, her brother Vizzini, and my friend Mia. So Mia and I happened to meet through a mutual friend, and then we figured out that our dogs were actually litter siblings. So Verona and Vizzini are from the same litter. One of the biggest things I've learned through this experience is, the importance of educating others. So hearing loss is an invisible disability, but with Verona, people are always looking, and even though it's usually to admire her, I do try to educate people when they ask to pet her. People only know how much we educate them on. So whether it's about our dog, our cochlear implants, our hearing aids, or any other difference, I've kind of realized how important it is to try to educate others when we can. So similarly to the duo dogs, we do a recertification yearly or every 2 years, virtually this year because of COVID. So these are some videos that I sent them for it. The first one on the left is her alerting me to my fire alarm. And as you can see, she comes over, she nudges me until I ask her what. and when I ask her what, she lays down. That's because for the fire alarm, I trained her to lay down. For the other items, for like a timer or the doorbell, she'll bring me to the source of the sound. But for the fire alarm, I wanted her to just lay down. That's how Canine Companion does it. That way they don't run into a dangerous situation. The video on the right is her alerting me to my keys. So I drop my keys, she's alerting me, I ask her what, and then she runs to the keys and kind of nudges them. So thank you guys so much. Thank you, Taylor, for inviting us to do this chat. This is my email. I'm very accessible by email, and I'm always more than happy to talk about anything. So please feel free to reach out.
So thank you again, Krista and Arielle. Again, like I've gotten to know you guys over the years, and I've gotten to meet Taylor before, which Krista and I kind of chuckle about some confusing moments of Taylor and Taylor. But I've learned so much tonight, and just am blown away by the amount of training that you're doing. But just how these dogs are helping you guys and making life a safer place for you. So thank you for agreeing to share your stories with people. And again, these are two just amazing women. And for any of you families here that have questions about their experiences with their dogs, and also just their lives of having a hearing loss and navigating schools and using accommodations and everything, they will be excellent resources for each of you guys here tonight. So thank you for letting us join you.